about to begin. We want to welcome you to the Vampire and Devil Show. We want to welcome you to the Vampire and Devil Show. It's gonna be bloody fun. We're gonna kill everyone. Welcome to the Vampire and Devil Show. With lots of blood and lots of guts. Two horror fanatics and rock and roll nuts. Welcome to the Vampire and Devil Show.
Devil, my friend, I got a question for you. We're familiar with a little sadness. We're familiar with happiness. We believe in love. But a question for you that I have is, can it rain all the time?
I don't know, man. Can it?
Well, we're about to find out and talk a little bit about the tears that had already start to fall from the Crow faithful as you and I take a few minutes to talk about, as of the recording of this, us seeing Bill Skarsgård's The Crow.
Yeah, we're gonna rain on everybody's pity parade, whether they were loving the remake or hating the remake. Most of it was hating the remake. We're gonna rain on their parade of stomping it, because our review is actually, I believe, going to be better than what we expected.
Yes, it will be. So here's the thing, Fangs. As you guys know, the fact is, we are going to say spoiler alert. We are going to do our best, especially since we were fortunate to see the movie very quickly, very early. We are going to go out of our way to not, say over the top too much. But the fact of the matter is, we are reviewing it. We are giving our opinions. So fact of the matter is, spoiler alert. So just deal.
Yep.
Yeah. Mrs. Vamp is already expressing her displeasure of the remake in very pro Brandon Lee fashion.
Oh yeah.
Yes. So first and foremost, Fangs, look, Devil and I are realists. We're not going to pretend like we're not. We're not going to downgrade something that was great. It does not hold up to the original Crow. The original Crow is the original Crow. It will always be that way. It is the gold standard of now 5 movies. But here's the thing. You and I talked about this movie very quickly, because at the time that we actually started this show was like the same week that Vanity Fair had put out the early photos of the Crow movie. So we talked about it. We talked about our reactions and our thoughts behind it. I'll start this off by just giving my overall opinions leading into us seeing it this afternoon. Is my stance really never changed. From the neck up. First and foremost, though, I am a Bill Skarsgård fan. I'm very excited for Nosferatu later this year, and I loved him as Pennywise, and plus the Skarsgård family are just excellent actors. So first and foremost, I will put that out there that I am a Bill Skarsgård fan. However, from the neck up, I absolutely loved it. I loved the look. I thought it was a fresh take. I liked the fact that it wasn't identical to Brandon Lee's, because I feel like while there's stuff we're going to get into about whether or not this should have been done, I'm glad it wasn't a match to what Brandon did. In fact, I give credit to all the Crow movies, none of them completely matching Brandon's. But anyway, I did like the look. I thought it was cool. I do like Bill's facial structure for the look. So I've always liked it from the neck up. I've always been kind of into it. Now, from the neck down from the original photos, I definitely wasn't a fan. I didn't like these pencil jailhouse looking tattoos that he had. I thought they were kind of tacky, while I understand the modern spin on what they may have been thinking about when it came to that. I just wasn't a fan. I just thought it looked kind of tacky. This is what I will say about the movie. Um, the makeup still for me worked. I was a fan. I was in. I loosened up my opinion on the tattoos as I watched the movie, realizing that certain tattoos did play into the story. They were important parts of the story. While I've never claimed to like the awkward face nipple tattoo, I did, and I said this to you this afternoon, I did like the fact that, contrary to what the photos made you believe, you really never saw that tattoo very clearly. So I actually appreciated that, and I liked the fact that it wasn't, you know, on the forefront, because that was the one in particular that I thought looked really tacky, and I was just like, why? That makes no sense to me. So anyway, yes, from the time that we did our initial reactions, I was a fan from the neck up. I was not a fan from the neck down. I loosened up while we watched the movie. I thought the overall look did kind of work. So that's my little synopsis of my initial reaction to my current reaction throughout the movie based on his look. And right to you, my friend.
Yeah. Like I said in the beginning, when they announced like the movie, I've always been a hardcore like no sense of remaking this movie. It's already a good movie. I'm cool with them doing a continuation of A Crow, like a part 5 or something like that to begin with. But I mean, going into it, knowing that this was technically a remake or reboot or however you want to say it to begin with, because obviously, they're doing the same character names with Shelly and Eric. So I was like, you know what? I was like, eh. But I kind of did like the fact that I mean, like I said, these two movies are drastically different from each other. Like I said, other than the fact that you have the Eric Draven name and you have the Shelley name, and the fact that they get killed and he comes back as a crow and he's got the somewhat crow makeup, that's really the end of the similarities of this movie and that movie. So I did like the fact that it wasn't trying to just capitalize on remaking this movie almost shot for shot, maybe just changing a little bit and keeping a lot of it the same, where literally 99.9% of this movie is a completely different movie, completely different origin story, completely different story altogether, other than the fact that you have these two main characters that are similar. That's pretty much where it goes to. And like I said, us being a Crow fan, we were already kind of going into this, you know, not putting full expectation of this being great. I've always been firm with the rankings from the Crow movies have actually are exactly how they are chronologically, where the first
Yes.
movie is always the best one, the second movie I liked better, the third movie was but still was all right, and then obviously Wicked Prayer is not only the worst Crow movie, it might be officially the worst movie I've ever seen. I would like to put that up against a Rotten Tail. I think Rotten Tail might actually beat it. to movies that are horrible, and I'm a huge Edward Furlong fan to begin with, so it makes me really really sad that he's and then obviously you know when it comes to remakes, Edward, or movies that have other IPs, I mean, other than Terminator 2, his track record's not really good with The Crow, and then his horrible Night of the Demons remake movie he was in too.
I
So,
know, dude. I will say, while I definitely with you on that Rotten Tail comparison for all of our fangs that, of course, have seen that episode, I will say though, if you're making me pit them together off short memory, like thinking, man, Wicked Prayer is going to literally eke out the victory, and it's literally, in my eyes, going to eke it out by a half a point, solely based off the fact that I like Edward Furlong and respect him, and that it's a Crow movie. Doesn't make it good, but the attempt, the the skeleton of the story of the basis story is still there. But again, because I like, because I love The Crow, and I like Edward Furlong, if you're going to put me on the spot, it's literally going to eke out a half a point victory. But you're 100% right, my friend. Absolutely, when it comes to that. Some of the points that you just brought up, you know, I have currently two and a half criticisms kind of this movie based on what has already been announced. And that fangs that have not yet seen the movie, these will not be spoilers. These are just my opinions based on what I saw today. Maybe a touch of spoiler-ish, but again, they're common knowledge. The character known as the Skull Cowboy from the graphic novel that was announced to be in this movie is in this movie. That guy that guides Eric, kind of teaches him about why he's here, how he can get back, how Shelley can get back, and or the repercussions of decisions he made, is absolutely there in this movie. I was disappointed that there was no Skull Cowboy to him. He was just a guy. To me, he came across simply more of an archangel than he did the Skull Cowboy character. So I'll leave it at that. So again, that was an announcement that everybody knows was out there for this character. Yes, he is in there. I just think it falls flat on what people would expect to see. And I'm not saying that they're expecting to see, you know, Ghost Rider type stuff. But again, you know that kind of character. Actually, speaking of Ghost Rider, that character that taught Nicolas Cage was more of a Skull Cowboy than what I got in this movie, which actually led me disappointed because I was really amped to see that because he was a main part of the graphic novel and he was not even used in the original Crow. But again, the original Crow is one of those movies that just gets it so right, even not quite sticking to the book, as the old saying. It's just so well done, perfectly executed.
Yeah. Well, they technically had him in the original one too, because Michael Berryman was actually gonna play him.
Yeah.
But then I guess things didn't happen, and the way that they had it, his character was gonna be kind of like how it was in the comic book. Yeah, I was kind of disappointed. I mean, although in this movie I do like his character, I like the fact that they have his character in this version because he is that gateway and his knowledge to helping the Crow know, helping, Eric to understand what he is, where you didn't get that in any of the other movies in the Brandon Lee one, where, yeah, I liked it, but I wish they would have used him as how he was supposed to look, or at least how he looked in the graphic novels.
Yes, yeah, you are 100% right on that, Devil. Like, he is definitely, yes, Michael Berryman and stuff. He was cast. They did shoot things for the Skull Cowboy. He just ended up on the cutting room floor. And again, doesn't take away overall from the Crow that we know and love. But that character is kind of important. So it was a bummer he ended up on the cutting room floor. But anyway, when it came to this one, yeah, I was glad to get that character. Just a little bit disappointed in the execution. Now, my other part to it is when it comes to Shelley's character, and I'm going to keep this to the point because, again, I don't want to be overly disrespectful considering how fast we're doing this, but I do have some points to put across. You will, in my opinion, the Fangs will see in this movie that the original movie, when it came to Eric and Shelley, was based around true love, passionate love of then two people caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. There are little hints, if you know the graphic novel, of stuff when it comes to Shelley seeing something that she wasn't supposed to see, and kind of they got hunted down. And then, of course, everybody knows what happened to Eric, and then the very bad things that happened to Shelley. While in the graphic novel, what originally happened to Eric was actually a little worse. And it was a little bit more right to the point when it came to Eric's character in the Brandon Lee movie. In this current movie, I didn't love the backstory of Shelley because I felt it doesn't fit the true love well, the true love was there. It didn't fit the innocent victim for me. I did feel that Shelley's backstory was a little too dark, a little bit too dirty for what was to be portrayed as this innocent victim murder that allows her lover to want to come back and fight for her, get revenge, and hopefully bring her back. That's my opinion. I thought that her character was a little bit too sinister and evil. Now, there were underlying factors as to what she did in her past and why she was forced to do them, and I'll leave those up for the Fangs to watch and decide on their own. But simply based on the basic skeleton of what we saw of the Shelley character, I didn't totally love that because I did feel, there's that old saying, when you get married, do you deserve to wear white? I didn't really feel that Shelley deserved to wear white when it came to this.
Yeah, and like you said, I completely agree with your points too. And there's no disrespecting the actress, the Effie Twigg, who did this. I think she did a really amazing job acting as Shelley in this movie. I just agree with you completely too that her character, like I said, especially with The Crow, it being so much about a murder of innocence and this like ultimate like sin against them is what kind of and that love is what brings Eric back from the dead, was because of his love. And like I said, the love, and like you said, the love in this movie is definitely very, you can tell that those two characters and those two people were true lovers, and you can feel that in the movie and their performances. But yeah, again, like that innocent factor was a little bit more downplayed, I think, in this one. Even with stuff that's common knowledge in this movie. I don't think it's a spoiler, but I'm just gonna mention it anyway. I'm pretty sure it was part of that, but with them being drug addicts and stuff like that, and that drug play being in it, where that added a little bit, downgraded a little bit of that. Not saying that that people who use drugs or hardcore drugs or anything are bad people. They're sometimes some of them are not very innocent either as well, because sometimes they do bad stuff to get their fix. So yeah, like I said, other than that, I really did like I said, I liked her performance. I liked the love interest of those two. I thought they played well off of each other, and you really felt like I you get a little bit more of that aspect in this movie than you really do with the Brandon Lee one, because the Brandon Lee one is just so quick. When
Yeah.
it comes to Shelley and them, it's mostly, a lot of times in that one, it's mainly just the flashbacks. But I mean, and even though, like I said, even though you get more of that love interest in this one, I still feel that the original one, you really truly felt the love between Shelley and Eric, and the pain that he got caused from her death. Not that you don't feel it in Bill Skarsgård's portrayal of Eric. I just felt that in the original one, it was definitely more felt. You truly felt that that he loved her so much that he would have come back from the dead regardless.
100%. And that's a little bit of the thing too, is because with that past where, and this kind of leads into my other point I want to bring up on this topic, is with her past, there's, again, like I said, that doesn't deserve to wear white thing, where it's with her past, it leads a little bit more into getting what you got coming, or your past, of course, catching up to you. When you learn about the growing up of Eric, you learn more about this great loss that he had as a child, that really was deep rooted of something that he deeply cared about, is kind of what led to him having this reckless, abandoned adolescence that landed him in, the rehab center or juvie, or however you want to look at it. Versus with, Shelley's character, basically her past is catching up to her. And that's what leads her strictly to get into the rehab center or juvie, or however you want to look at it. That, though, however, does play into one important part of the movie that you don't have in the Brandon Lee version, because that love is so pure and so strong, literally from 3 seconds in the movie all the way till the credits roll. But mistake or problem or just part that makes this more of a reimagining is the incident and the learning of certain situations causes that seed of doubt in Eric's brain of, is it truly love? Or can I handle it? Which was never even something that even remotely crossed your mind or you would have ever even let be a possible thing in the Brandon Lee version. And it actually, that learning and certain decisions after that led to the big decision of the movie and led to the final climax scenes right up to the end of the movie. So it was a very important thing. But that was the one thing I found very kind of interesting, an interesting choice in the screenplay, that you're trying to somewhat be based off an original movie of true love, that you would let a little crack in the foundation form, which never would have ever thought to have been a thing in the first movie, nor was it. So I did find that to be kind of interesting.
Yeah. As far as me, as far as like my, my griefs and my approvals of this movie, the main thing that I dislike somewhat in this movie versus the original one, the Brandon Lee one, is that this movie, the original one was very story based, but it was action packed throughout the whole entire movie. There was a lot of action, a lot of fighting, a lot of kills, a lot of violence in this movie, to the the bad guys and the group doing bad shit throughout the whole entire movie. And you saw them with with the Darla and them doing the drugs and them just wreaking havoc throughout this town and Devil's Night and all this kind of stuff like that. Where this one I feel was not that it was to its bad thing. It was a lot more story driven. And then when it got towards the middle, towards the end of the climax, was when the action came. And and like I said, not disregarding it because I love it. The action in this movie, though, especially the violence, is way more graphic in this version than the original version, which I did like that. I just kind of wish that it was a little bit more throughout the movie instead of such a long kind of backstory-ish and stuff like that, especially because we somewhat already know what the backstory is, especially when you're using the Eric and Shelley character. It'd be different if it was a completely different Crow movie and we don't know these characters, then we wouldn't really need the backstory. But then again, it's a possibility. Maybe they wanted to do that because that's a different side of it, and that so they needed that backstory with maybe people who haven't seen this new generation of people who maybe haven't seen the old Crow movies and stuff like that. So you have to assume that maybe nobody has ever seen the Crow movie with Brandon Lee, so that I understand the backstory of it. But that was my only kind of like major disapproval of this, or dissatisfaction of this movie. The main thing that I loved about this movie, and I'm not gonna, like I said, a little bit of spoiler, but not much of a spoiler, is I love the, other than the Crow and his supernaturalist, because he's a supernatural character anyway. It's a guy that comes back from the dead and is getting empowered by the Crow. I like the other aspect of supernatural and another character in this movie, and I loved it because it was kind of like that supernatural versus supernatural. And this, I did love that aspect of it because that was something different where you had in the original one, where in all the other movies, other than when they try, other than the Brandon Lee one where they try to take the Crow away from him and try to use the Crow for their powers, nobody has any superpowers other than Eric. So I like that aspect of this one.
Yeah, I'll definitely, I see you on that point, 100%. So I'll meet you on those like 2 points. When it came to the graphic part of the movie, you're right. It's 100% more graphic than the first one ever was. I'll be honest. Look, I love blood, some gore, and all that kind of stuff as much as the next person. But this is what I didn't like about the current movie that I really did prefer about the old movie. I actually didn't love that the violence was so revved up in this movie because, again, this is again this is a reimagining, so that's their prerogative for what they wanted to do with this movie. But again, what I liked slash loved about the original revenge plots of The Crow was it was based more about fear and the revenge, where Brandon's character came in establishing like a dominance, almost kind of like a Batman type aspect, where he was striking fear into these guys, making them run, making them legitimately regret the decisions that they made. Where in this movie, it was so blood heavy and just kind of a slaughter fest, where it was so much more, him just offing like henchmen, guys that don't really have a reason to be afraid per se, because they're hired guns to do a job, and this guy's trying to attack. Their job is to take this guy out. Well, Eric took them all out in his place. It was so much more, in my opinion, like John Wick or Kill Bill, which I just didn't overly love based off the history of the Crow character and how he, was known to get his revenge. Again, yeah. I love blood as much as the next person, I really do. And it's only my personal thing where, the kills were great and there were some very creative ones that I really liked. But when it came to still basing it off the Crow character, I missed that he didn't have that lurk in the shadows, talk, have that silver tongue poetic way of speaking as well to exact the fear in the villains. So
yeah.
I kind of missed that part.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, as far as I go with it, I kind of agree with you, but then I kind of disagree too. I think in the Brandon Lee one, that made more sense. Him being this kind of supernatural, making the jokes and stuff like that, where it was very creepy. I felt like the kills in this one made more sense because of Bill Skarsgård's character being so, like, so crazy and so more, more of a head case in this one. You can just, because of his past and stuff like that. So it made more sense. Yeah, when you were talking about but that's, not spoiling anything, but that was probably one of my favorite parts of the movie too, is, you have the henchmen going after him and they're blowing the fuck out of him, just like in the original Crow, shooting the shit out of this guy, and he's taking all these bullets, and yet you're still going after him all the time. I'd be like, I don't give a fuck about who I'm working for. I shoot a guy 7,000 times with me and my buddies, and he's just coming out. I'm not gonna try to like kung fu fight this dude. I'm getting the fuck out of there. Like that's what I just love, that part where these guys in this movie were just like, yeah, I'm still gonna go after him, and I'm like, dude, you just shot the shit out of him like 7,000 times, and the dude didn't die. Yeah, I'd be running.
No, and you're definitely right about that. And then the second point, when we're talking about the supernatural character, I did like that, because we discussed that after the movie, where there was a cool factor to Top Dollar in the original movie. There was a certain je ne sais quoi. There was a certain sex appeal to that character, but it was more of that just kind of like, high gangster, want to rule the city guy.
Yeah.
Where he's still just a guy. He's gonna bleed like anybody else. He's gonna die, frankly, like anybody else. Versus in this movie, you did have those heavier supernatural aspects where it was almost more of a fair fight. And don't get me wrong, anybody who knows the history of the first Crow movie knows that it was still kind of a fair fight, because at one point they injured the Crow. So, there was a mortality on an equal playing field that did happen with that movie. Yeah, so there were similarities between the final fight of Brandon Lee and the final fight of Bill Skarsgård when it came to the two people being on an even playing field. There actually were similarities. It was literally just like a yin and yang. It was just on other sides of the spectrum. But I did think it was kind of cool to have this supernatural guy that you learn about having these powers throughout the movie, versus Top Dollar, which has always just kind of been that traditional kind of like, almost like, even though the movie is based off a graphic novel, that like comic book villain who's just a guy. He's just a guy with power. So I definitely understand it when it comes to that. So as we get to our final thoughts on this movie, and before we get into the obituaries of it, let's have two parts to this, and I'll let you start, my friend. What did you simply think overall of the movie? And then, if you're looking at the 5 movies, how do you personally rank them?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, yeah, I mean, going into this, I loved it and stuff like that. And, to add into another little point, I guess somewhat this can be considered a spoiler. I don't think it is, but again, I'm just gonna say possible spoiler alert. Because I mean, the way people know stuff about that and going that. The one things that I did miss, a lot of things I did miss about this movie, in this movie versus the original one, was the Sarah character
Yeah.
and Ernie Hudson, the cop's character. I missed those. I mean, I understand why you didn't have that in this movie, but I missed like having those kind of characters that he could relate to as well as being, from his human life to the crow life. But then again, like I said, yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, I dug this movie. I thought, I went in, not with, like I said, I knew that between the two of us, you are probably more likely going to like this a lot more than I was going to like it because you're a bigger Crow fan than I am. Not to say that I'm not a Crow fan. I mean, I'm a
Yeah.
huge Crow fan, but as far as like just Crow, everything you love, just Crow in general. So I was like, I was going in going, okay, yeah, I don't see this being that great, but I knew, Mrs. Vamp didn't want to go see it, and Mrs. Devil didn't want to go see it, so it was going to be a boys' movie. So, I gotta support my boy and go see The Crow and bite a bullet if I need to. And like I said, after I got out of the movie, I didn't feel like I overpaid for the movie. We went matinee, so it's like $11 or whatever we paid for it, and I didn't feel like I got gypped out of money. Like, oh shit, I wish I would have not paid for this movie and saw it for free or something like that. It wasn't to that point. Like I felt like it was worth going to see in theaters, and I'm glad that we went and seen it before all the hysteria, before people go either start shitting on it or maybe reversing their shitting and saying, "Hey, it's actually not that bad of a movie." So I'm glad that we did get to experience the movie before all the big heads came out and started doing this. But yeah, like I said, overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun movie. Yes, is it anywhere close to the original? No. Like I said, I don't care who it is. You could have, I'm a huge Quentin Tarantino fan. I'm a huge George Romero fan. You can bring Stanley Kubrick back from the life. You can bring every director I've ever loved, every writer I've ever loved, and make the movie, and it's never going to be as good as the original Crow. And that's not even including the fact that we did lose Brandon Lee making that movie. I think this movie, even if he would have lived, would still be a hard movie to top, just because was so well written, it was so well acted. It was just so, the whole tone of it is just an amazing movie. It just those little factors of him passing away do add a little bit of extra to it, because it is sad to watch it, especially like, when he's watching the little kids in the original go by, and they give you that little slow motion pause of Brandon Lee smiling, and that we lost him. So it's tough to watch sometimes, and I understand why some of his cast members from the original one are kind of anti this movie, because it is tough to go into a movie. Like I said, I don't think they had any problems with 2, 3, or 4, because it is a continuation of a Crow story, but you're not trying to do the Eric and Shelley show. But like I said, overall, I thought it was decent, and like I said, I enjoyed myself. As far as ranking goes, I would honestly, put this one meet. I'm kind of contemplating whether or not I'm gonna put it in the 2 spot or the 3 spot. I mean, I still want to go a little bit, maybe City of Angels as part 2, and then this is 3, and then Salvation, and obviously Wicked Prayer, and obviously the Brandon Lee original Crow is going to be number 1. But I mean, there are aspects that I like to this movie that kind of bumps it up above 2, but then there are some aspects of part 2 that bump it down. So it's like in between in between the 2 and the 3 spot. I think that is a good spot for this, which is like I said, start before we went to the theaters. I was expecting this to at least be a 3, maybe a 4 in there, because I mean, I was hoping. I pretty much knew it was going to probably be better than Wicked Prayer. I was really hoping that it was, because if it was going to be worse than Wicked Prayer, I'm going to be like, I don't know how it'd be capable of being worse than Wicked Prayer, but I was like, so at least I knew I had that benchmark that it's got to be there. But like I said, it did succeed better than what I expected it.
No, I'm definitely with you on that one. When it came to Sarah and Ernie Hudson's character, Rochelle Davis's and Ernie Hudson's, it would have been cool to see that little dynamic in there. It would have been kind of cool to see those characters. They weren't really going to fit, obviously, like you said. I completely agree with you on that one. Ernie Hudson's character was just never going to fit anywhere, and sort of to a certain degree, Rochelle's character was ish represented, but not as Sarah. It was that there were, Shelley and Eric's kind of homies, not like a ton of them, but they each kind of had like a right hand man, like a friend that was kind of prominent in that movie. That kind of filled a little bit of that void of like, the friend of the deceased kind of thing. So it was kind of there, but yeah, I definitely missed the dynamic of Ernie and Rochelle's characters, because not only their dynamic with Eric, but their dynamic between each other. I always thought that was very cool. So and I liked all that. Again, I'm kind of glad that I stuck to my guns on my overall thought of this movie. Yes, I had my reservations about this movie, definitely stuff that had me nervous, being that I am a big Crow guy. I do love the fact that there's something that was shown in the initial Vanity Fair photos that pissed like everybody off that actually wasn't even done in the movie or used in the movie. Maybe they heard the backlash, maybe because those were, dress rehearsal potentially photos. They were able to read about the backlash, get an opinion, and change it on the fly where it didn't cost any excess money. But there was something about the wardrobe that everybody was pissed about that they ended up not doing for this movie that I think was the right move, personally. Do I think it would have been petty to get pissed off about? Yes. But for the sake of the character, I am kind of glad they left it out. Now, when it comes to the ranking of the movies, I'm very loyal to 1 and 2, like just full on, because I like, of course, while Rochelle did not reprise her role, but that has more to do with the fact that she wasn't old enough to reprise her role in the way they needed her for City of Angels. But I really do like City of Angels quite a bit as a direct sequel to the original Crow. I think they play off each other very well. And again, I like the solidarity of that pure love truly being wrong in that second movie, where it's based around a father and son, where the son is literally just being a child. He's just being a 5-year-old kid that hears a noise, runs out to investigate, and turns out that it's a horrible crime being taken place by these, these like gangster, degenerate, thug kind of people. So, and then being subsequently killed because they saw something they shouldn't have seen. So I really liked the way City of Angels played off of the first Crow. I thought it was done very well. I do put this movie, like you, right in the middle there. For me, it was never going to overtake City of Angels, so it was always going to be at the best the third. I do have a soft spot for Salvation. I've always really liked it. I liked the story. There was a certain comedy aspect that they kept splicing in certain places that I did enjoy. But I do probably overall do rank this movie third, because again, I'm proud of myself for sticking to my guns, because I do think the points that I told people not to jump out of a window about did come to light. And things that I didn't love were explained. So that was a nice thing to see. That was a pleasant surprise. So for me, I rank them as 1, 2, 5, 3, 4 personally. The Crow, City of Angels, 2024's Crow, Crow Salvation, and Crow Wicked Prayer. I think everybody knows that Crow Wicked Prayer is going to be the last on everybody's list. And I do think that includes this movie being above it, no matter how much of a purist or a snob you're going to be. I personally think that if you find a way to put this below Wicked Prayer, you're really just being bitter about it. So that's the way that I look on that myself. So yeah, I think we're definitely kind of right in sync when it comes to that overall. I think our only real difference is like I definitely see all your points about where it is with the second one. For me, it's just a very solid number 3 because I just think the first 2 movies are just too compatible to be denied personally. So when it comes to the obituary, man, this is kind of how I look at it for my ranking. I'll just get right to it and then I'll explain. For me, it's a 6, just flat. It's a flat 6. And I don't mean flat as in weak or just no air in the tire. I just mean just right there. Because, again, I think it's a solid movie. Like you said, I never felt that our money went to waste. I was happy with the overall movie. There are things I would change that I talked about earlier in the review, things that did disappoint me for not being done, that led me to believe they were going to be done. But overall, I do think it's a quality movie. The reason I knock it down to kind of a mid-level grade, is the fact that, like, it's, again, this is more me being a Crow guy. It's more of an action movie. I feel like if you took, like, the actual book, you know, of, like, John Wick or, like, Kill Bill, like the physical copy of the book you would read, and then take a physical copy of the book you would read of, like, a book like Queen of the Damned, and took the jacket off the book and put the jacket over the book of like Kill Bill or John Wick. I feel like it's more of that just big revenge action movie, you know, with the gothic love story cover. That's one of the reasons it does lose some points on me for that, because I feel it lost a little bit of what The Crow is about. But overall, I do think it's an enjoyable experience. So for me, I give it a solid 6 on this one.
It's not a
Oh yeah. I mean, I agree with you exactly on that. I mean, I wouldn't feel right giving it a higher point than 6, because I think 6 is good. I mean, 6 is amazing versus, like we said, with me, with Salvation, I would probably not. I would give that definitely lower than a 6, and obviously Wicked Prayer, if there's a negative system, I would probably give it that. So I'm completely, like I said, to me, 6 doesn't, sometimes doesn't seem like it's a good number, but actually in the cross reference of the Crow movies, 6 is actually way better than you think it is. So I would agree with 6. Like I said, there are things that I would have done differently. There were things that I did enjoy about this movie, and like I said, it was definitely better and more watchable than I thought it was, especially with some of the remakes that we've gotten, recently with some other movies and stuff like that. They're, like I said, they're just all not always great. Some are good, some are decent, some are like just hard to watch. And this one, like I say, it's never like I said, it's never gonna be close to the original. I still kind of wish that they would have just made this another Crow movie instead of making a Crow 5 and make it with the storyline and stuff like that. But now after seeing it, I don't hate it as much of being a reboot or a revisit to the series. And no spoilers. I mean, there's a possibility that if this movie does well, which I mean, I honestly, with the way people are hating it, I don't think it is. But I would be cool to see them do something to continue on with how they ended this movie. So, it definitely has that kind of possibility of a continuation, or at least in that world. So it'd be cool to see them maybe go back into that world of the Crow. Maybe not necessarily, with the characters, but that same kind of world and stuff like that. So, like I said, I mean, I think 6 is solid.
Sounds good to me, my friend. So that's the way it's going to be, Fangs. For the Devil and From Vampire, we are calling The Crow 2024. We are giving it a 6 on the obituaries. Thank you so much, Fangs. Horns up, Fangs out. This has been Vampire and Devil's review of 2024's The Crow, starring Bill Skarsgård as Eric Draven.
Oh, yeah. Rock on.